Namdeo Dhasal's Golpitha, the language of a caste-less world. Marathi poet Namdeo Dhasal's work are a significant development in the world of literature broadly, and in India specifically, as they talk to the oppressed masses and their conscience in the language they use every day. Dhasal's first collection of poem Golpitha was generalized by the Brahminical writers as the aesthetics of a fractured world. The language of Golpitha was not known to them, but their quest for hegemony in the domain of literature led them to interpret it, again in their own language. Golpitha was the arrival of the rejected world in the literary life of a nation. It was not only Dhasal's caste location in the urban context that was responsible for the emergence of Golpitha, a non-Brahminical, anti-caste narrative, but it was also a result of his voracious reading habits, as well as his conversion to Buddhism. The movement of conversion and its impact was widely sung by Ambedkarite Shahirs, who are singers or performers who use music often accompanied by small theatrical performances that address the social life in India from all anti-caste perspective. At such a phenomenal juncture, the songs of Shahirs become the epistemic base for Dalit literature. The structure of oppression is seen in its entirety from below in a much more transparent way, since those who are at the bottom are at the receiving ends of all forms of discrimination based on caste. So when those at the bottom write, their language offends the experts of language. Dhasal's poems have always remained in demand in the field of literature. Despite all the criticism, his poems have deconstructed and consequently reconstructed the trust we place in poetry as the imagination of an equal, just and fraternal world, fundamentally a caste-less world. The language of his poems was the language never used in literature. His poetic narratives involved a creative assemblage, including the non-Brahminical dialect of Marathi, Hindi and Urdu, spoken in Golpitha, a red light area in Mumbai, which Dhasal used to refer as Do Number Ki Duniya. This wasn't any tragedy in the life he lived, which upper caste writers attempted to foist on him while writing about him. He understood the mechanism of oppression, and hence his poetry stood against it. A sense of tragedy never leads to assertion, as it is an understanding of the oppression and the philosophy of life and living of a person that determines possible assertion. In this sense, the revival of Buddhism, the conversion of Dalits, mostly Mahars in 1956, indicates the arrival of philosophy of living in the lives of those who converted to Buddhism. For them, the caste system was the source of all kind of oppression in the life. It would go on to become an unavoidable part of the literature they would produce. Golpitha was written with an anticipation of change. Kenya's biggest writer, Namdeo Dhasal, iterates the fact that the problem with repressive regimes is that they like to starve the imagination. They don't want you to think or imagine the possibilities of a different future. To observe this fact historically in the context of India, it is quite evident that the purpose of Brahminical narratives was to starve the imagination of Dalits in the domain of literature. Dhasal's own declaration about how poetry specifically and the language fundamentally had an impact on him in a way that helped him to get out of the starvation of his imagination proves that it is the language constructed by experiences and not the language imposed on us by Brahminical pedagogy that helps us realize the different possibilities of a future. Dhasal declares the epistemic base of his language, his poetry, when he says, "Once you develop a taste for knowledge, you begin to grow fast. If you do not have a vision, you become a problem unto yourself. I never become a problem to myself. I became a socialist, but as soon as I saw the hollowness of it, I turned to communism. However, whatever I did, my foundation was Ambedkar's vision." These quotes have been taken from the article Namdeo Dhasal's New Language that was authored by Yogesh Maitreya. Please do like and share our videos and subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Economic and Political Weekly.